Hi, I'm Patricia Baird Clark, and this is the first teaching in a series I'm doing on satanic ritual abuse, magic surgery, and the structure of the inner world. I've been ministering to people who've been satanically ritually abused on almost a daily basis for the past 19 years. Also, during that time, I've studied the Bible extensively, and between the two, the experience of ministry, along with deep Bible study, God has been able to show me many things about the inner world, the mind and the soul of people who have been severely satanically ritually abused. This teaching is primarily for ministers, counselors, and lay persons who are ministering to satanically ritually abused persons. And if you happen to be an abused person who has turned to this particular video, I suggest that you pray and ask the Lord if it's all right for you to watch it, because I would not want anything I say to trigger you. So understanding the structure of the inner world will greatly facilitate ministry when we understand where altars are placed and why, and the connection between alternate personalities and demons. But first off, I'd like to just begin with explaining the way abuse often begins for a person. The cult chooses a child to be their special child, the one they receive power from. Everyone knows that in satanic rituals, sometimes a human being might be killed, a baby might be sacrificed. But most people don't know about the living sacrifice. This is the child who grows into an adult who was chosen to be abused her entire life in order for those who use and abuse her to get power from the devil. You see, the devil wants to destroy innocence. He wants to ruin another person's life. And so people who are willing to do that, to pay that price, can get a lot of power from the devil. But a common situation is a satanic family. A lot of Satanism is generational. So say it's a generational Satanist family, and they choose a child in the mother's womb to be their special child. They will actually abuse the child in the mother's womb. They do this by injecting needles into the womb, by dropping heavy objects on the mother's belly, something like bricks, for example, or raping the mother. These things that traumatize the mother also traumatize the baby in her womb. And we believe that they attach a fetal monitor to the baby in the womb, and when the baby is being traumatized, its heart rate accelerates greatly, and then at some point, if that heartbeat drops and gets slow, much lower, while the trauma is still being induced, then they assume that the baby dissociated in the womb. The baby can actually split away from its main stream of consciousness and form another personality in the mother's womb. This is hard to believe, I know, but I have seen the results of this kind of abuse, because I've had a few people that I've been ministering to who will have an alternate personality come forth, and this person will say, I feel like I'm floating in water. I must be in my mother's womb. I feel like I'm floating in my mother's womb. Now, of course, someone who is remembering something in the mother's womb, that is very supernatural. Only the Lord could let them know what happened to them, and He does that. Because when we know that when we are pre-verbal, we don't really have memory. But in this kind of ministry, where the evil that has been done to the person is so very supernatural and so incredibly wicked and intense, the Lord does marvelous, miraculous things to help them come out of that kind of abuse. So many times I have met an alternate personality that's actually still in the mother's womb. That's where she split and formed another identity. And so I ask the Lord to minister to that one, and He does. He comes and ministers to her and takes her where He wants to take her at that time, which we'll talk about later, which would be the safe place. And so with this abuse going on in the womb, at birth, in infancy, all through childhood and adulthood, there's a tremendous amount of abuse that goes on. And the person learned a coping mechanism way back in the mother's womb, and that was to split away from their mainstream of consciousness, to dissociate, form another personality. And so when abuse goes on in the home, 24/7, there's abuse in the rituals. A person splits many, many times. They can split into hundreds, even thousands of alternate personalities. Their abusers know that they're dissociating. They want them to, because they want to keep the person broken up and confused. And they know that dissociation can make her forget. And so they want her to dissociate. And they even call demons up from hell to be attached to each alternate personality that it's formed, so that each personality has a set of demons that keeps it separated from the person in which they live, to keep them separated from each other, and to keep the person from remembering what happened to her. So there are many parts of a person's soul that are inaccessible. And the cult even trains some of the alternate personalities to work against the person in whom they live. They are so deceived, they don't even know that they live in that person. So there can be a great many personalities formed, and many demons put in charge of various personalities. So there's a lot of activity going on in the mind of someone who's been so abused. And all these alternate personalities and demons are not inside the person in a random way, just here and there, a hodgepodge of a jumbled up mess of personalities and demons. It isn't like that. There is a structure that they are purposely placed in an orderly fashion, which I'll get into in a little bit about how the structure is formed. But it keeps this person's soul inaccessible to her, and many parts of her seem to be dead. I ministered to a woman one time who would slap her face, and I'd say, "Don't hurt yourself. Why are you slapping your face?" And she would say, "Because I feel dead. And when I hit myself like that and feel pain, I know that I'm still alive." So what a terrible evil is put upon people, not of their own choosing, but in the mother's womb, before they ever did anything, good or bad. So certainly that is a tremendous evil. The Old Testament Hebrew word for evil is ra, from a root word ra'ah, which means to spoil by breaking in pieces. And this is what the cult does to the soul of a person who has been satanically ritually abused. They break that soul into pieces. They shatter the soul. They just ruin the person's life as much as they possibly can. But many of these people find Jesus Christ. I think, from the memories I've heard, he comes to them when they're little children and they're being abused, and they know who he is. And the Lord does wonderful things to bring people out of this terrible darkness. The Old Testament Hebrew word for darkness is choshek. It means destruction, misery, death, ignorance, and sorrow. And these are all things that the cult wants for the person they're abusing. They want to ruin their life. They want them to live in terrible misery and sickness and sorrow and ignorance. They want them to be ignorant about what happened to them. They want them to be ignorant about knowing that they were ever part of a cult or sexually abused in any way. And they want them to be ignorant about who they are. They do not want these people to have an identity. They want to keep them so broken and confused and controlled, they don't have any idea who they are. And we'll pursue this more regarding the structure in the next segment.